Every day we hear from buyers who are having a difficult time trying to find a house in today's market. Some of them have put in 3, 4, 5 offers. Sometimes they've put in 15 or 20 offers to get a home under contract. It is competitive out there, and I'm going to give you the reasons as to why it's so competitive in terms of why it is so hard to find a home. And I'm going to give you 5 reasons and conclusions that I draw that can help you navigate this purchase market. Hi, I'm David from the Cramm Group here at Home Mortgage Alliance. And again, inventory is scarce in almost every part of the country. And so there are specific factors behind that, and that's what we're going to go through today. In order to really understand the inventory, though, you have to look back in time. If we look back over the last 10 years, you would say to yourself, well, that's fantastic. New home starts are up 255% over the last 10 years. So you'd say, well, then why are we having a problem? As I drive around our community here in Colorado, there's new home developments going up everywhere. There's new land being scraped. So I'm looking at it going, why isn't this happening enough everywhere? And why aren't we able to balance demand with supply and be able to give people more of a shot to buy a house? But when you look at a longer term trend, when you look at the last 20-year time frame, that starts to tell a bigger story. So in 2005, 2006, we hit a peak in new housing starts in the United States. As we went into 7 and 8, we had a housing bubble and a housing crash. That caused home builders to contract. It caused a lot of people to leave the industry. So a lot of good skilled workers went on to other jobs and started to do other things. It caused a lot of home builders to go out of business. And so it has taken us that long just to build back to the capacity that you might be seeing in your community. And what you see so far is that is growing, and we may be growing at 255% over a narrow time frame, but we're still well below our capacity from where we were in 2005, 2006. So when you start talking about where I'm reading all these articles and it seems like home building has slowed, and then they say, no, wait, home building is growing. Well, if you're looking at real recent information, yes, home building and new home starts, good news in 2021, are starting to escalate and starting to grow again. But once again, we're still well behind where we've been. Now you say, well, that can't be the only problem, and it's not. The other problem is when you start to adjust for population. So our population in the United States has grown, and the millennials, which is the largest home buying generation right now in the United States, are starting to buy houses. So as a millennial, you know, if you look around at your friends, you're looking saying, absolutely, we're all starting to buy homes. So when you think about the amount of pressure that that puts on the demand, this graph gives you a very clear indication that from 1960 and 1970, by and large, decade over decade, on a population-adjusted growth basis, we have been shrinking in new home starts. So we're well behind where we've been. We've heard some other things happening in the news this year. The cost of lumber has risen dramatically over the course of the last year, year and a half, largely because of COVID. But when you put that in historical perspective, going back to the year 2000, the cost of lumber, yeah, it's higher, but it's not off the chart higher. That's not the reason that's causing home builders to say, oh, geez, I can't buy a house, or I can't build a house, excuse me. That's not what you guys are seeing in terms of looking and saying, I want to go buy a home. It's just one of the factors at play. Now, certainly demand being high and supply of maybe raw materials coming into the house being constrained. Let's say they can't get lumber to build the roof. Well, that would slow things down for sure. And it has in some parts of the country at some points in time. But that's not the main issue. When you look at other building costs over from the year, mid 2020, end of 2020, all the way up through 2021, you have rapid increases in things like diesel fuel and the lumber, copper and brass, amongst other products that go into the house. So you've seen those costs rapidly rising, and in some ways, that is a supply chain problem in them getting the raw materials in to go build homes. But again, is that the only thing driving that issue? One other factor that I found really interesting as I started to put this Mortgage Real Talk together is that profit per home in the United States for home builders has increased 2018 over 2019 and 2020. So we currently, on the average, a builder is making 18.8% of the total cost of that home goes straight to profit. If we compare that to another country like Canada, let's say, same lumber issues, they have the same supply chain problems, give or take, and their average margin for home building has actually dropped year over year. So the builders are making less over that 3-year time frame. So I'm looking at it going, all right, if I built widgets, let's say I built Ferraris, and I said, I want to keep demand high so I can charge a premium price with a premium profit. Am I going to produce 1 million units a year? I don't think so. I'm going to produce enough so that I can make a high enough margin to be able to make what I want to make on that particular product and remain exclusivity. So what's happening in terms of the housing market, I think is very similar. I think we have builders saying, could I grow capacity? I believe there are ways for them to do that. I think there are ways to increase what they're doing in terms of their year-over-year housing starts. But I think there's a disincentive to do it. If the widget prices come down, they're making less per unit of home that they produce, and that is a disincentive, not an incentive, to produce more widgets. The other thing that's happened over this period of time is interest rates have gone down consistently. So when my dad was in real estate, mid-80s, interest rates were at their all-time peak. Needless to say, he didn't last in real estate all that long. So, sorry, Dad. But what you did see was rates continued to come down. And as we've seen historic rates over the last 2 years, that has brought more buyers in, increased demand, because you have a bigger population. So not only do we have millennials coming in, and the population of the United States is growing, but you also have people who would have struggled to buy a home maybe 5 or 10 years ago who are now able to buy. So it's a perfect storm of low rates, low inventory, and humongous demand. So what are the 5 conclusions? The first, I'm sorry to say, inventory issues are here to stay, and they're here to stay for quite a while. I don't think there's any way home builders get themselves out of that, and I'm not sure there's much of an incentive for them to do such. New home prices will continue to outpace the price of resale homes. I love new homes. There's something about that new home smell that's great, just like a new car. But I can tell you, you get more home for the money per square foot on a resale, and the property taxes are less. So your overall mortgage payment is less, and you're getting more home for the money. Mortgage rates will continue to remain low, and they'll continue to drive sales. Even if mortgage rates go up by half a point, which is 1%, you're gonna see people and that demand still be there. Now, I'm seeing a lot of things on YouTube lately. Maybe it's just my feed. But at the end of the day, I'm seeing people say, watch for this housing crash coming, watch for this housing crash coming. And man, it's clickbait. Every time I see it, I want to just click on it and go, goodness gravy, my price of my house is going to fall off a cliff. And do they make valid points? Are people behind on their mortgage? Unfortunately, yes. Is the government propping them up? Yes. Will millions of those homes come back onto the market all at the same time and depress values? I don't think so. what you have is a huge increase in the equity growth of these homes. So are there going to be people that are going to be forced to sell? Yes. But their homes are right side up, not upside down. So if you're in that home and not making your mortgage payment, you can work with the bank, you can sell it, you might even leave it a profit. So you're not going to let it go back to the bank and create some wild inventory issue. In addition, let's say I'm wrong on all of those. Let's say all these homes come back onto the market. Do we really think demand isn't there to absorb them? Do we think that demand can't spring to try to get that and bring those homes back in? Yes, there might be a small bump back in prices of homes, but it's not, in my opinion, going to be significant. Is it still a good time to buy? Absolutely. But there's one thing that everybody who's in the housing market needs today, and that's patience. There is a right home out there. It may not be the end-all be-all, but if you can stomach it and not ride the highs all the way to the high and the lows all the way to low, you'll get your offer accepted. It's a matter of time, working with the right lender, working with the right real estate agent, and ensuring that your offer, even if it isn't necessarily the strongest offer, is pulled to the top of the pile because of what your lender and your agent are doing to try to help you get that offer secured. With that, that's been today's edition of Mortgage Real Talk. Follow us on social media at the Cramm Group, and we really appreciate you watching. Thank you.